All set. All
All
right.
set. Welcome to the 81 podcast. It is your host, Asif Ali. I am joined today by three-time Pro Bowl, two-time All-Pro, Super Bowl 38 starting lineman, Arena Bowl starting lineman, Washington Huskies national champion, College Football Hall of Fame inductee, and Fox Sports 1 broadcaster and Pac-12 Networks broadcaster, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Lincoln Kennedy. Lincoln, how you doing
Yeah,
today, brother?
definitely a myth today. How you doing, buddy? How's it going?
It's going all right. So yeah, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. How was
Happy
your New
New Year
Year's?
to you. Everything was wonderful and quiet. The family is safe and healthy, and I guess that's what matters most. It is what it is.
100%. Obviously 2020 was a crazy year, so we're glad that we're in 2021. So glad to be blessed. So all right, yeah. So let's talk. Okay, so I guess obviously I mean I already did the great intro. Everyone knows who you are. Everyone's like, all right, Lincoln Kennedy's gonna be on the show. Like, yes, exactly. So I'm just gonna basically kind of just start kind of from the beginning. And so obviously you were born in I believe you were not born in California, but you were raised in San Diego, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I was born in York, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I'm a Navy brat. My father was in the Navy, so I moved out to San Diego, California at a very early age. And I consider San Diego my hometown because I spent most of my growing up years there, but I was born in central Pennsylvania.
Central Pennsylvania. Okay, cool. So you're basically what at what age did you actually move to San Diego?
What was that? About 6 or 7, something
Okay.
like that, somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So basically San Diego is where you grew up your entire life,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, cool. So in San Diego, obviously was football your first sport or were you a multi-sport athlete?
Not at all. Matter of fact, I was raised in music and the arts.
Wow.
I didn't start playing football until I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
Before then, I had played various pickup games, obviously, on the streets or in the parks. But no, football was not my original sport. Excuse me.
No worries. So yeah, I mean pretty much with football, I mean with it not being your original sport, you praise how what caused you to transition of a sophomore year from music arts to playing football?
It's a funny story. I was actually discovered on the playing in a halftime marching band for a football game.
Okay.
My high school coach named John Shacklet saw me on the field playing in a marching band, and he came up to me after the high school performance was up, and he asked me what grade I was in. At the time, I was in ninth grade, and he said, "You're coming out for football next year." Next August, the trial for football, and so I was like, okay, and that's how kind of my football career started.
Wow. Okay, so just by random chance, if someone sees you, in the marching band, and what instrument were you playing?
I was playing trumpet and baritone. I think at the time I was playing baritone in
Okay.
that high school marching performance. But I was raised in music. In the third grade, my mother put a trumpet in my hand. She said, "You're going to do something with yourself. You're not going to just sit around." So that's how I got involved in music. But I think at the time in the marching band at that performance, I was playing baritone. So I was playing a horn in a halftime performance, and that's when my high school coach discovered me.
That's awesome. You know what I mean? Because just by random occurrence, like okay, like you're playing baritone
Exactly.
trumpet and exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that because one of my teammates, because I was playing the arena league, so that's why I got these.
There you are. See,
Yeah, exactly. Three.
there you go.
Got to. So obviously, one of my teammates, same thing. He actually played college, and he took some time off, and he started doing wrestling. And then he was just spotted by a coach just outside going to his wrestling practice, and like, oh yeah, you got to come try out for our IFL team. You got to come, and just by random occurrence, just like,
Yeah,
hey,
sure. It happens. It happens. That's all good.
exactly. So obviously now you're a sophomore, and you're playing now in high school. Were you originally a lineman, or were you a different position? You transitioned to lineman.
No, you know what? When I first tried out, it was very awkward and clumsy. I had some athletic prowess, but I didn't have anything else really developed because I didn't play. And
Right.
so I was playing both sides of the offensive line. I was playing defensive line and then offensive line as well.
Wow. Okay. So basically, you're like me. I was uncoordinated as hell when I tried to play high school, try to play football because I didn't play in high school. My grades were too bad. I got to play in JUCO, and that's why I walked
Certainly.
on. Yeah. And so kind of yeah, I can totally resonate with that. How was the transition trying to progress? I mean, how was it for you trying to progress to become a natural kind of lineman? Because it's
Naturally, mentally, I was very analytical. I,
right,
I was always analytical. I had
right,
that type of mind. And so John Shacklet, Coach Shacklet, came to me and he said, "You know what? You didn't have the greatest tryout, but there's some athletic, potential there. I think I'm going to move you up to varsity and figure it out." But I was like, with all due respect, Coach, because I hadn't played football before, I said, I'd like to go down to junior varsity because I'd like to learn the game without having the pressure of being on the varsity starter. And so his eyes were, got big when we had the conversation. He was like, okay. So I started off at junior varsity, and then I developed a friendship, and I got bit by what they call the jock bug, if you will, in high school. So all of a sudden I wanted to play every sport I could. So
Right.
it went from football to wrestling to basketball to track and field to everything you could do within that time frame while you were in school. And that's how I kind of took off with sports.
That's awesome. And like, pretty much with that being a multi-sport athlete, I know obviously you were recruited for football probably around your junior, senior year. Were you recruited for any other sports scholarships as well?
I was, but again, I was a little, a little on the backside of it because I wasn't as familiar. So, for example, basketball was actually my favorite sport to watch
Okay.
and to play pickup games and coming up as a kid. I was a tall kid, so I was always picked for basketball. That was actually my favorite sport, even though I wasn't competent really enough at playing it. That was my favorite sport. So when the offers kind of rolled in or came in, most of them were for football. There were a few that were for other sports.
Very nice. Okay. And then kind of when you were going through your recruiting process for football, you obviously Washington were you ultimately decided, but what other schools were you entertaining? And kind of talk me through that process of selecting
Well,
Washington.
yeah, the recruiting process was a little overwhelming because when you start receiving offers or scholarship interest from another number of schools, you really don't know where to go. And my coach John Shackler was really my biggest mentor. He informed me like, look, when it comes down to recruiting, these guys are going to make you feel like you're the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right.
Make you feel like the sport won't go on if you don't come to their school without them. And I was a little childish to be honest with you, because there were certain things like mascots that came into mind. For example, I'll never forget the story that with Oregon. Oregon sent me an offer, and originally back then, Oregon had the Fighting Donald Ducks.
Yeah.
They had that on their helmet, and so I sent I answered their questionnaire. I said, you know what, I really appreciate the interest, but you guys are fighting ducks, and I don't know how manly or I guess I would say overall anyways it didn't look right. It didn't look
Right.
right. So between the fighting ducks and the beavers, the Oregon schools were out of my mind. And I was never a big fan of green or the color. So it was little things like that. On the other side, when it came to Stanford, I was in over my head because I thought that I could never qualify scholastically for
Hmm.
Stanford, even though I was enthralled. I was like, oh my goodness, Stanford's recruiting me. And what can I do? And so I didn't think I could qualify. So I kind of wrote them off early and say, this won't work for me. But the recruiting process can be somewhat overwhelming. But my coach Shacklet said, look, you just have to you visit a place, pick a couple places, visit them, visit the school, and you'll find out which one you want.
100%. And pretty much with that, you narrowed down to Washington. Was there any school that was really kind of competing with your interest when you made that final decision to commit?
When I came out of high school, I wanted to be recruited as a defensive lineman because I
Okay.
played both ways.
Right.
And when I got into football, one of my players I followed was Ed Too Tall Jones from the Dallas Cowboys. He
Yeah.
wore number 72. That's the reason why I wore number 72, because I always felt that I could relate with that. I was always taller than everyone else.
Yeah.
So when I first came out of high school, I wanted to be recruited as a defensive lineman because I wanted to get a chance to play defensive lineman. Offensive lineman didn't have any glory. Defensive lineman did, and I wanted
Right.
a little glory playing the game. So it was the communication. The way I narrowed it down to my final schools was, yeah, we'll let you play defensive line when you come to college. Michigan was actually my first interest.
Okay.
Michigan was the first one that recruited me hard, and I went to Michigan. I saw Bo Schembechler, may he rest in peace, and in a hospital after he had one of his bypass surgeries. But Michigan was one of those places that really just it got me excited.
Right.
Great facility, great school, alma mater, the tradition, everything else. I remember, watching on CBS when I was growing up, Go Big Blue, all that type of stuff. But they were actually trying to swindle me in a sense where they were recruiting me as a defensive lineman, and then my coach told me they wanted offensive film on me, and
Mm.
he also informed me that, hey, look, when they get you, they can do whatever they want with you because they have you. So be mindful of that. So Michigan was actually my first love. Washington became my second one.
All right. So what prompted you to not go to become a Wolverine, instead go to the Huskies?
Well, you know what ended up happening is when I found out about what Michigan was trying to do, that just blew me off. That
Right.
turned me away from them. And then I've always been a water baby. Always loved water. And when I went to Washington on a recruiting trip, it was sunny. You could see the school, the lakes, and all the water around it. And I thought it was beautiful. The Emerald
Right.
City really lit up. So Washington agreed that they would recruit me as a defensive lineman, give me a chance, and that's how I ended up there.
Fantastic. And so now basically you're a true freshman at Washington. And did you start off the bat or did you have to redshirt?
I did redshirt my first year.
Yeah.
I came in with a crew of Steve Ettman and Mike Lustig. That was our three freshman defensive linemen, and we went through the first year, a redshirt first year. I think we had I think I want to say like a 6-5 record. It was the first time we broke the tradition of going to bowls
Right.
at the end of the year. We had a bad year, and so Coach James at the time, who was another person who's passed on, came on and he said, "You know what, Lincoln, we're going to change up things around here. You can stay on defense. We'll respect that. You might not play that much, but you can stay on defense, or you can go over to the offensive side where our new offensive coordinator or / play caller, who was offensive line coach Keith Gilbertson, said that he could take someone like you and put you to good work." And so I took the ladder and said I wanted to go over to the other side because I wanted to play.
100%. And obviously with that, I mean, what was it? The Morris Trophy came a few years after that. Yep.
All this stuff behind me happened after
All that
that.
stuff behind you, the Washington
Yeah,
Huskies helmet,
yeah.
little, yeah, man, and the national championship, not to mention.
Right. That's right. So I had a good career. It was a good decision.
Great decision, yeah. And so, kind of talk to me about kind of what was your favorite moment from your college career?
Oh man, there's so many to count.
Yeah.
You know what? I guess I remember the signature moment, if you will. I remember playing against USC as starting to get my first start
Right.
against USC. It was September of 1990.
Right.
We ended up beating USC 31-0 in Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
and that was one of the fondest moments because I remember I started as a guard because the tackles positions were solidified. But I started as a guard, and we ran. I can't imagine how many screens we ran where I had to get out in front of Greg Lewis, who had a career day that day. But it was one of those things where we tore up USC, we tore
Right.
them up at home in Seattle. It was a very fond moment. It's one of the signature moments to stand out.
Yeah, I can imagine, because obviously they're Pac-12 back then. Was it Pac-8 or Pac-10? What
Back
was it?
then, back
Pac-10.
then.
Right. So Pac-10 rival, you're just being able to play them in your own homestand, and obviously USC with all their lineage and history, and for you to be able to kind of know the impact on the game is key.
Certainly.
100%. So now basically, and I think was Russell Maryland your teammate, or was he not?
No, he played in Miami.
He played
He was
Miami.
Miami. We wanted to play Miami because we shared a co-championship with them in 19.
Yes.
But we wanted to play them, but no, he was on Miami. He was my teammate, eventually my teammate with the Raiders. But yeah, in the college, he went to University of Miami. I went to University of Washington.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking about. Because I remember, I think Mark Brunell on your team.
Yeah, Mark
Yeah,
Brunell was our quarterback, one of our quarterbacks, as well as Billy Joe Hooker.
Billy Joe Hooker. Yep. And so pretty much, you obviously you guys had a great run, a great team, and just kicked everyone's ass. I mean, it was just amazing. Just watch that. So that's awesome, And so kind of talk to me about kind of now, obviously, when you wrap your college career, it gets time for the draft. Kind of what's going through your mind, because you're obviously a very high rated prospect coming out. So kind of what was your process like for pro day, combine, being invited to the NFL combine? Talk to me about that.
Much like the college experience, as far as recruiting, I wasn't sure how strong my skills were or what I was going to do on the next level. After we won the national championship, our coaching staff kind of got broken up. Everyone went everywhere, other places. People had to begin to ask me if I was prepared to move on. College was a fun experience for me. I didn't want to leave, but most importantly, I wanted a degree. And I hadn't had my degree after we won the national championship. I was still short. So I decided to stay in school. With that being said, the recruiting process for the next level, scouting process, I should say, for the next level started. And I had a number of teams of interest in me. And I was like, okay, whatever it is what it is. But when the draft came around in April of 93, I began to just sit back and watch how things unfolded. Now, I was on, it appeared to be I was on everyone's list from the first pick. Now, going into the 1993 draft, most of the people that I talked to said there was going to be, because New England and Seattle had the first two picks, they were definitely going to go to quarterback. However, there was a chance that they would all actually go offensive line, and because they also need offensive line help. So I was being scouted by basically the top 10 teams. I was projected as a top 10 pick. Tony Mandridge, the offensive lineman out of Michigan State, had gone a year before and had a couple years before, and it turned out that he didn't have a really good career. So people were a little leery of spending such a high draft choice on an offensive tackle, especially if they thought they projected a bust.
Right.
But I remember Joe Bugle, who was the offensive line coach, but also the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals at the time, called me up and he's like, "Look, we need an offensive tackle. I love you. I think I can make you work." So I was on the fence about, I was on everybody's radar about playing at that position, or coming in at number 3 or number 2, even to some people. So most people had speculated what the top 2 picks were going to be. Most in my world, it was Drew Bledsoe and Rick Meyer. That's how it turned out. That's exactly what it was. Drew Bledsoe went to New England. I think Rick Meyer went to Seattle, and then I was the next one in line to be picked. So it was a very nerve-wracking process, if you will. I was on the phone with all of those teams, going up to where I went number 9 with Atlanta. But you know what? I just wanted to be. My goal going into it was to be the first tackle taken, or the first offensive lineman taken. I happened to be the second offensive lineman taken because at number 8, New Orleans picked Willie Roaf, who was a future Hall of Famer, great guy, good friend of mine. But he went to Louisiana Tech. And my agent discussed it. Scott Casterline told me, he's like, "Look, this is a great business move. It can help sell tickets because he's a local kid. That's fine." And so when Atlanta called me, it was June Jones was the offensive coordinator. And it was Jerry Glanville was head coach at the time. Mike Herock, who was the GM or general manager, president, called me. He was like, "Look, we need a tackle. We think that you and Bob Whitfield, who came out of Stanford a year before, can be our future bookends. What do you think about coming to be a Falcon?" I'm like, "Let's go for it." Even though I didn't know anything about the run and shoot offense, which they were running, I was like, "Let's go for it. Let's do it." And that's how I got picked at number 9.
Yeah, and then you kind of huge sigh of relief. Finally,
No
and
doubt about
exactly. And so kind of what you said about, the run and shoot offense and kind of adjusting, adapting to that. Talk to me about that. Obviously rookie year, how was it for you adapting and learning the run and shoot offense?
Very, very different, because when I got into Atlanta, I was coming from a winning program at Washington. When I got into Atlanta, Jerry Glanville did a lot of things differently. It was much more free, and I had no experience with a pro format. But I mean, we had meeting rooms where guys were reading the paper, not paying attention, or guys smoking cigarettes. I mean, that's what it was like back in '93. But just try to go out there and give it my best. It was a different world for me. I was exposed to the NFL. I had money. I was in a new city. There were a lot of things that were really, really different for me, including the coaching staff and the game itself. But we didn't win. We didn't win a lot of football games those first couple of years in Atlanta. And we had San Francisco in our division. Los Angeles Rams were in our division. Well, St. Louis Rams at the time. And I think we had Tampa Bay Buccaneers that was in our division. Really weird division, being in Atlanta and being named as the NFC West.
Yeah.
Those teams like that in your division.
Yeah, and obviously the traveling must have been kind of interesting too, right, for divisional games, right? So
Very true. It was very different, very weird.
Very different, yeah. So kind of, and obviously then you're able to kind of get up to speed with the offense, and then the first couple of years were struggling, or you struggled, but then obviously around, I'm not sure, it was '96, you guys kind of got together.
Well, '96 we ended up going to the playoffs, but I wasn't a starter then. And matter of fact, we went to the first seed of the playoffs. We played Green Bay and lost in Green Bay in the first round of the playoffs. Because I wasn't a starter, and I signed a very short contract, because my agent said, "Look, B. Larry, this offense might not suit you. We might want to try to be able to get out of Atlanta as quickly as possible." And that's exactly what happened. So after my third year, I went up to Ken Herock and I said, "You know what, Ken?" I was like, "With all due respect, you either trade me or cut me, because I don't want to be a Falcon anymore." And then they found me a new home in Oakland with the Raiders.
Yes, sir. Right. And obviously the team that you lost in the first seed, they basically won the Super Bowl that year. So there's no shame in losing to them in the first round, right?
It is what it is, but still, I wanted to play.
Well, I mean, you sure you want to go up against Reggie White, Lincoln? I mean,
that. Well, I mean, I did that. I did that many times in my career, but at the time I wanted to play, and I didn't feel comfortable sitting and watching it from the sidelines. So
Right, absolutely. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, you had a great
yeah,
career. It was just Reggie White's obviously one of the greatest of all time. Just amazing to see, kind of that matchup. So it's awesome. So talk to me about Oakland right now. You're in new home, new system. Who was the head coach at then? I'm not sure who was the head coach, kind of what the
I
scheme
think it
was.
was Mike White my first year when I came in Oakland. I got via trade, went over, but it was Al Davis who, may he rest in peace, was
Maybe.
a major influence in me coming into the Raiders. And the moment I stepped in, Joe Bugle was actually the offensive line coach, even though I think it was Mike White was the head coach. And Joe Bugle was like, "Look, you're here. I know what you can do. Potentially, you're going to be a starter." And once I came in 1996, when I stepped foot on the Oakland Raiders sort of playground or field, with you, I never looked back. I was a starter ever since.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's when pretty much, the Lincoln Kennedy legend became, known, right? Obviously here in the black hole, O.co, which was formerly now O.co. Now they're in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
So yeah, go ahead.
right. Same thing, same thing. Eventually, just the Raiders. Just call it the Raiders and go where we want.
Raiders, black and white, right? So yeah. So kind of obviously with you obviously in a new system, new scheme, you have a lot more success, and eventually Rich Gannon comes to the fold, right? And so now you're basically blocking for Rich Gannon, and you have a better offensive line, but you're basically anchoring that offensive line. Talk to me about transitioning, kind of, obviously from Atlanta, you were starting, but then you also weren't. But now you're basically in a leadership role, and you guys are kicking ass. You know what I mean? So
Well,
kind of that
you know what?
transition.
Yeah, the thing is, the Raider, there was always a natural hierarchy in every position group. For example, the receivers were led by Tim Brown.
Right.
The running backs was a collection, because we had a few of them, from Napoleon Kaufman to Tyron Wheatley to eventually Charlie Garner. Everything was like in a hierarchy setting. So when I first came to the Raiders, Steve Wisniewski was one of the more notable offensive linemen that was here, more established.
Right.
And so I kind of, was generally pulled under his wing, where I was groomed to be the leader. And when he retired under, John Gruden, the first years, the years that we had tremendous success because we were a very close, founded, family field type of unit, or team, I should say. We found our way with the running game, and then when Rich Gannon came in, he kind of transformed us to be a little bit more versatile with his passing ability as well as running ability. So we became a more prolific offense. But it was a very family atmosphere type of team.
Yeah, and I think that family atmosphere kind of resonated, right? Because obviously, to this day, I'm sure that you guys are still close, everyone, and that's the big thing about the Raiders. It's a family, I mean,
Without a doubt, without a doubt.
yeah, and the Raider Nation, we know that the craziest fans are out there. So obviously, Rich Gannon gets there. What year did Gruden get there? Was it
Gruden
92?
got there in '98.
8, right? Okay.
Yep. Yep. And so that was my first year with Gruden in '98. We went 8-8 '98, 8-8 '99, and then 12-4 in 2000,
Yeah.
where we hosted the AFC Championship game against the Baltimore Ravens, who eventually won the Super Bowl after that. And then in 2001 was a Tuck Rule game, and that's when last year Gruden for the trade.
Now we have to. I hate to do it, but I have to, because I watched everyone's seen the documentary. Talk to me. Talk to me.
You know what? In all honesty, the Tuck Rule game was an unfortunate incident. So, you have to understand the whole scenario before you kind of put it in place.
Right.
Everyone remembers the Tuck Rule game as being one of either, depending on where you were, either it was the right call or we got hosed, however you want to look at it. But what you have to remember is 2001, 9/11, 2001, the day the towers went down. We were in season. That week, the NFL canceled all of its games. We were scheduled to play the New York Jets that week. They ended up putting that game, moving it from that week to the last game of the season, regular season for us. It was the New York Jets, hosting the New York Jets in Oakland. So, long story short, we played the New York Jets in week 16 or 17, whatever it was, because they didn't have that game the 9/11 week. And we lost to the Jets. We lost to the Jets. The Jets needed that game to get into the playoffs. They beat us in Oakland. Turned around the following week, we played the Jets in the first, and by the way everything fell, we had to play the Jets the very next week, the divisional game, because we won our division. But we had to host the Jets. We beat them that year. But because we lost to the Jets, we ended up losing position, which means we had to go to New England. If we won our game, our divisional round game, hosting the Jets, we had to go to New England the next week. That was a tuck rule. If we were a better team than the Jets. If we had played the Jets at 9/11 when everything took place and the world went at war and our country went at war, we probably would have beat them in Oakland if 9/11 never happened.
Right.
And then we would end up hosting the Patriots rather than going to the Patriots. Long story short, I felt we were a better team than the Patriots. We just didn't play that well that day. We didn't play it well. And obviously the refs and everyone knows about the tuck rule game that played a big part in what we did. But it was unfortunate, but it's forever cemented in history. It is what it is. After that game, Gruden got traded. And we went on. We went home obviously for the playoffs. I was having one of my better years. I was going to the Pro Bowl. I played in the Pro Bowl along with a couple of my offensive teammates. But the following year, we ended up having Callahan as our head coach, Bill Callahan, and we ended up going to the Super Bowl and meeting Gruden again with Tampa Bay and losing. So history is what it is.
Yeah, history is what it is, and I don't mean to open up any wounds, but kind of when I watched it, which Gannon kind of broke it down, obviously he's correct because the league basically reversed the tuck rule, but they waited till after Al Davis passed away. And
Right.
I'm not one for conspiracy theories, but the timing's a little suspect. You know what I mean?
The thing is, I learned as a Raider is that the world was against you. If you're not a Raider fan, you're against it, so you have to play above the refs and everything else.
100%, and that never changed. It's never changed, So, and kind of to your point, I mean, obviously, like with Bill Callahan as head coach, I don't know if you can attest this to more anyone. Everyone said Gruden knew the playbook heading into the Super Bowl, so there really wasn't much else to do. Obviously, the whole Barrett Robinson situation, which I mean, you can talk about that too if you want, but kind of what.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that what people want to blame Barrett Robin being not there was the reason. No, the fact is that Gruden knew us better than ourselves. When we got into our rhythm, when we got really good as the Raiders with Gruden and even after he's left, we only ran a certain number of plays.
Right.
Gruden helped create Rich Gannon. He knew how to defend against Rich Gannon. And so I'm of the mindset that the only person that could beat us that year that we played the Super Bowl was someone who knew us better than we knew ourselves. And that was John Gruden.
Right. John Gruden gets all the credit in the world for that year, I mean, just literally the first year there. Yeah, yep. Granted, he had historical defense on that side of the ball with Warren Sapp, Rondé Barber, Derek Brooks, all those guys, and then obviously, but yeah, to your point, Gruden knew Gannon, but Gannon had his MVP year. So like you said, it's just the stars aligned for Tampa Bay that year. So
without a doubt, it happens like that.
It does happen like that. Okay, so kind of, obviously with that, I mean, at that point, you're three straight Pro Bowls, two-time All-Pro selection. I mean, back-to-back, and then now pretty much, I mean, at this point, I think that's when things started like going downhill for Oakland, right? So
no doubt. I mean, we're going through another coaching change after the Super Bowl. Bill Callahan, really felt bad that a team, opposing coach knew us as well as they did, wanted to change up everything. But you have to remember, Rich Gannon, who had just come off of an MVP year, Tim Brown, Jerry Rice were having career years, or bolstering their stats. I mean, they were really good pros. A lot of offensive players did not want to change, and we had to change because we didn't want to be as predictable as we were with the Super Bowl. We ended up going 4-12 the year after. I tore my tricep in the second to last game, I think it was, in Green Bay. And I just did not want to go through another coaching change. I knew it was on the wall. I knew Callahan was going to be gone and everything else. And I was just tired. I was mentally and physically fatigued. So I stepped away from the game.
And I can only imagine what that's like. Obviously, I retired last year, and I'm just like, after 12, 13 years of playing, not in the NFL, but still in the arena level, and the arena really dissolved. It's still just like, you know what I mean? But actually, no, that's a perfect segue because at this point, that's when you take some time off, right? And then you end up coming back in the scene, which I'm familiar with, arena. So talk to me about that.
Well, you know what? Everyone knows, as you know, once you sit around and you watch it, you kind of get the itch. You still think that you can do it no matter what the level is, especially when you've been at the highest level.
Right.
You get the itch. And I did. And I rested, and I thought that I could come back. And there were a lot of people in my corner who were saying, you know what? People haven't seen you in a couple of years, and they just want to see what you're capable of. Why don't they need to see you play? Why don't you try arena? And I was like, at first, I was turned off because in my early days of arena, understanding arena, you had to go both ways. And I was like,
Mhm.
I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be a two-way player. I'm too old for that. But they were like, no, the rules have changed. Now you can specialize in one position. You can stay on one side. You don't have to go both ways if you don't want to. I'm like, okay, well, let's give it a try. So, Dallas Desperados, who were owned by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, was my first stop. And then I realized a lot of the sort of, if you will, the rules of arena where they're trying to scout certain guys. I didn't get any play time. So I went up to the coach, who was a good friend of mine, and I was like, "Look, man, I'm not here to be sitting on the bench. What's going on? It's
Yeah.
arena." And he's like, "Look, Jerry wants guys that he wants to see that are a little bit younger than you. He wants to give them a try." And I'm like, "Okay, so what do we do?" So he traded me to the Tampa Bay Storm. And at the time, Coach Markham was the head coach, and may he rest in peace. He knew me because he was familiar with me in my days in Atlanta. So the moment I came over to the Tampa Bay Storm, I started playing. I was on the field, and that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to play rather than watch from the sideline. And boy, the world of arena is a whole lot different than what I was accustomed to in the National Football League. There's no doubt about that. But I made some good friendships. You know what I mean, with guys there, and I tipped my hat to them because it was a world that I didn't understand. I didn't really know fully about, but the guys who wanted to play ball were doing everything they could to be successful. So, I definitely tip my hat to arena football.
And so you spent 3 years with Tampa Bay, the Storm.
No, only 1 year. 1 year.
Okay, 1 year,
Yeah,
2010.
only did 1 year because it was after after playing arena football, I realized why I retired. My body was so beat up and burnt out, so I stepped away from it as well, and that was it. Just 1 year with the Storm.
Right, and then that 1 year with the Storm, you may not know this, or you may not know this, but Monday's guest Reggie Gray was actually a tryout a player for that team, and he got
Yeah.
cut, and he has to get sent back to Chicago. So
Uh-huh.
you may not have known that, but in
I
2010
didn't
he
know.
was the yeah. Yeah, that's what, it's like you said, like it's like the guys, like the relationships you make, the longer
Yeah.
you play and the higher you go, everyone
Sure.
knows everyone. The circle
Fair
gets
enough.
smaller. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, sorry. And obviously with Arena, with the Tampa Bay Storm, what was it like for you playing in the Arena Bowl versus playing the Super Bowl? How was that experience different for you?
A whole lot different. It was a
Yeah.
different face. It was a different, everything was different about it. Playing in arena versus the NFL. I remember we had struggled to find places to practice. I remember we had large car caravans that would drive over to parks, and Markham would pull over and say, "Okay, let's practice here. Just get in," before we got kicked off by police because we didn't have a license to be performing there. So it was things like that that you had to deal with every day in the arena game.
Yeah. Exactly. Obviously with the arena it's faster, right? As you know, right? It's a faster, and one of my coaches from one of my teams like I'm too big for the small man's game. He said that. But I mean, so sometimes you need bigger dudes to just block and just be able to, take the contact when you hit the wall and everything like
Yeah,
that.
certainly.
What's your take on it? Obviously with the smaller space and the faster speed of the game versus the NFL.
Oh, I definitely respected it. It was different. It was a different world altogether. So, but I definitely respected it and had fun with it. I mean,
Right.
because I could do what I wanted with defensive linemen, I could snatch them, throw them, and everything else, and they weren't called. Those types of things I got away with in arena ball would have been called in the National Football League, especially with the more open space and the more visual. So, but I definitely respected it. And Tampa will always have a special place in my heart when it comes to football.
Right. And this is what I got from my last season. So
Nice, very
yeah,
nice.
you can
Look at
read
you,
that.
special team of the year. I like
Yes,
that.
sir. Yes, sir. And that right there, you can't see. That's the trophy for
Nice.
that.
Nice. There you go. It's all
Yep.
good.
It's all good, baby. All right. So, so obviously that's your last season playing football. And then at this point, what's going through your mind? I mean, pretty much you're stepping away from the game. At what point did you kind of transition to broadcasting? Were you coaching a bit, or kind of what were you doing in between?
So to backtrack a little bit, in 2003, after we went 4-12, I was
Mhm.
approached by the NFL Network, and they
Yeah.
said they wanted to recruit me for TV.
Yeah.
And I had no idea I was going to go into TV or go into broadcasting. But the money was so lucrative and the offer was so great. I was like, okay. So for 2004 and 2005, I went into broadcasting. I got my first taste of broadcasting with the NFL Network. However, I wasn't a big fan of the NFL Network at the time because all we did was talk football year round. And there's only so many times you can answer the question, when is Brett Favre going to retire? But
So
I started to get into radio.
yeah.
But I knew that radio wasn't as lucrative as TV, and there were only a certain number of things that you could do. Being in Los Angeles, Fox Sports Radio had just started up at that time, and there was an idea. I was talking with the executive producers about getting in with Fox Sports Radio, and there was a chance that I could do it. But it wasn't as lucrative. So I took a step away. I did arena football. And then I went into the radio gig, if you will, where still trying to find my way. After I came out of arena football, I started pursuing the broadcasting option a little bit more. And that became with Fox Sports Radio, and that became with other various venues, but just still trying to find my way. I learned by doing some shows with Fox Sports Radio, I learned how to become more versed in other sports. It wasn't just football. I had to learn basketball was my first love, as I mentioned earlier in the interview. So I knew basketball, I knew football.
Right.
I had to learn hockey, I had to learn golf, I had to learn tennis, all that other stuff. And I was challenged by that. I started picking up various periodicals and learning about the other sports, learning about the athletes that are involved. And so I could talk about it and have a whole conversation. So radio became a big part of my life at that point. I wasn't so much concerned about the pay and the visibility, if you will, just the actuality of working. I got married. I had a kid. I had things I had to do. So there were other responsibilities that were in my life. But that's how I kind of got into the broadcasting bit.
Yeah, that's awesome because obviously when you're able to kind of transition in between the NFL and the AFL and pretty much, be able to kind of, get some of your feet wet, then obviously when you're kind of wrapped up with the AFL, kind of your experience, me at a smaller scale, I had a radio interview in Chicago, Hotspot Radio 2 years ago. And then I started this podcast roughly like a month and a half or 2 months ago. And people were commenting, they're like, awesome, you're doing a good job on the podcast. I'm like, they're like, that radio interview to kind of help prep you for that. Right. And so kind of you could probably test that firsthand, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I learned about the radio world, the broadcasting world, and I had a minor in degree in communications from the University of Washington.
Right.
So I had the ability to talk, but I never thought anything about it until I got into it. But it's definitely challenging and rewarding in its own way. I like the fact that you have to be versed, and it's not just football because I never wanted to be peg-holed as just a football guy. And I've had the fortune since then of being involved in radio and television and everything else year round. So it's really worked out for me.
It's worked out really well for you, obviously. I'm an admirer of your work, and I think you've done a great job, with that. So yes, absolutely. So one of my inspirations to kind of start this podcast and start making this, building this brand. So try and build Lincoln. So yeah. So pretty much now with your current role in broadcasting, kind of like you said, challenges to kind of talking about multiple sports. What's your favorite part about being like in a broadcasting role?
That you have to study. I'm a very analytical person.
Right.
And you can't just stay with the same opinion. You have to look at stats. You have to look at people. You have to look at interviews. You have to give your gauge. And the most challenging point of what I've done over the last 17, 18 years has been the fact where you have to develop your voice. Right. So for the Raiders, during the Raiders broadcast, a color commentator for the Raiders, I never wanted to be pegged as a homer. So I don't make apologies for the Raiders. I call it like I see it, and that's true development of voice, especially when it comes to college as well. Being a Pac-12, commentator, yes, I don't like Oregon, I don't like Wazoo, I don't like SC, I don't like other places other than Washington, but you have to call it like I see it. So if Washington's not performing well, I'm going to call them out. I'm not going to show my homerism, if you will. When Washington is playing, say, SC or Oregon, I'm going to call it like I see it. And that's definitely a challenge, developing your own voice. But I think the fans respect that because they want you to call it as you see. They don't want you to be one-sided, or they would only listen to the Washington broadcast, which I don't want. I want to be as versed as I can and as well-rounded as I can because I want everybody to respect my opinion, no matter what side they think it's coming from.
And I think that's a very good point to bring up because I remember when Michael Strahan also kind of transitioned to broadcast after he retired in 2008. Basically, the question that they presented, like, how are you going to feel about criticizing Eli, your teammate? And he's like, well, if you're playing good, I'm going to call like you're playing good. If you're playing bad, I'm going to say you're playing bad.
Right. Hard thing to do. Really hard thing to do because you want, sometimes there are parts of you want to make excuses for what you see. Right. But at the same time, when you're in this business like we're in, you have to be objectional. You have to be that person that's going to call it like it is.
For me, I mean, it's also been kind of like, former guys who I actually know who've played in the NFL. Because obviously when you play, you meet guys who get called up. it's hard, but sometimes I have to say, hey man, like, I mean, I used to, Jimmy Garoppolo is one example. I watched him play his first start in Chicago because I was living out there playing for the Chicago Falcons. There's also a small kind of semi-pro arena team, and then it's like I was there watching him, and I was like, this is great, and I see like what's the lack of availability in Kyle Shanahan and all the holes and all the issues. It's like, you know what, hey man, like Frank Clark might be right. Why are we
Yeah,
paying this dude? Why is this guy getting paid 130, 40 million? But that's just part of the that's nature of the beast. So
yeah, for sure.
talk to now it's to talk about being objective about the Raiders. Now we have to be objective about the Raiders. You walk right into it. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, you know what it is, what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I created this world for myself, and I don't shy away from it. So I'm
Yeah.
going to call it like I see it. But I also learned, through communications and everything else, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Correct.
So that's the key to when you're dealing with anyone. It's how you say it, it's how you position yourself, and how you put it. And more importantly, a lot of times, because everyone wants to make their opinion feel like it counts, it comes down to it to where you position a question or you position a statement to where you're inviting insight, you're inviting commentary, you're inviting opinions to allow other people to get involved. It kind of softens what you're trying to say.
Right. So let's talk about that. Right. So Gruden, with what we've seen for the past couple of years with Gruden, your former head coach,
Yeah.
kind of what is your honest take about the Raiders right now, the current state of the Raiders?
I think they've made steps, they've made strides of improvements when it comes to their offensive output. However, there's a part of me that believes that they're ultimately Gruden needs to humble himself and give up a little bit of the play calling, or give up a little bit of the, I guess, the image that is of the Raiders, because I think he needs to allow someone else to create a little bit of influence. Not to say to take over. And what I mean by that is, the offensive play calling has become somewhat predictable. They're
Yep.
running a lot of the same plays that I ran when I played with them. And so, back in the early 2000s, you give people a chance to film, they're going to catch up.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of idiots around there. So you kind of have to change up. You have to become a little bit more innovative and creative. And the fact is that you don't have to look further than in their own division. Andy Reid and with Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, look, they run a lot of the same plays they had when Andy Reid got there, but they created a little bit of nuances, a little bit of changes, just a little bit of a change, so you don't see always what you expected to see. And I think you have to be that if you're going to be in the National Football League, because the fact is that they've got players. They got players on the other side, so you're not going to be able to run the same thing over and over again and have success.
And to that point, the predictability of the play calling, delegating is key for any successful team, in my opinion.
Without a doubt. So I think that if he had brought in a young, innovative person to help, he's got Greg Olson who helps with buffer between him and Derek Carr, which is good. But I think you need to have a little bit more influence and a little bit more of a collective effort when it comes to the play calling and as well as the play distribution, because I think there's a level of predictability that we've seen over the last couple of years that has been the downfall in the second half of the season.
100%, 100%, totally agree. So now, actually, no, you kind of segued into something which is jolted my. So it's Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. We're in wild card weekend right now. Who are your picks and who are the teams for you to watch?
I've always been the one who said, until you defeat the king, there's the king of the hill. So I think Kansas City is going to be in it. However, one thing that we do know with sports, it's rare to see the number one seeds go exactly like people peg. Right now, you've got Kansas City, you got Green Bay. Somebody's got to lose. I don't know where it is, but I will say players or teams that you need to think about. Good old-fashioned football still wins when it comes down to it. So watch Tennessee, the Titans being able to run the football and play defense in the AFC. The AFC is a lot more competitive than I actually thought it was coming into this season.
Right.
So watch Indianapolis.
Yep.
I think they're there. But Kansas City obviously is my favorite, because until you knock them down, that's what they are. On the NFC side, it's a little bit more up in the air. I like Green Bay, especially when Aaron Rodgers thinks he's having an MVP year. But again, it's rare to see 1-1 meet up in the Super Bowl. So somebody somewhere is going to be productive. Tampa Bay, to me, is going to win their first round against the Washington football team. But then I think they run into some problems. New Orleans doesn't have – they showed me something without having any running backs being able to beat Carolina in Week 17 the way they did. But I still think Drew Brees is on the downhill climb. The NFC is a lot more harder to predict than I say the AFC. So it's a question. I think it's going to be Kansas City, but maybe Kansas City, Seattle is going to be a Super Bowl matchup.
Maybe, I mean, that seems like the case, because obviously Seattle coming back the way they did yesterday to win the West. So it was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah,
You know,
no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Russell Wilson, man. I mean, what about Hall of Famers? that man is just,
True story.
true story.
King of
You
improv. King of
King,
improvise. That's what he does.
yeah. What is it, Houdini, right? Man, the Magic Man. You know.
Without right. True story. Yep.
Yeah, I've seen him play 3 times, and I've seen Kansas City also play the Raiders when they came here. I'm just like, this kid is fucking amazing, you
Yeah.
know?
True story.
Yeah, true story, true story. So pretty much, okay. So now, kind of with Kansas City, obviously, you know, I mean, you did that's everyone's favorite in my opinion, my favorite too. Aaron Rodgers, do you believe Aaron Rodgers has the MVP locked up over Patrick Mahomes, and why?
Yes, I do. For what it's worth, the year that Aaron Rodgers has had with Devontae Adams and so on and so forth, I think it would be most of the voters are like, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. He's had a tremendous run. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be around, and you're going to be MVP candidate for a lot of years. But over the second half of the season, so for what it's worth, the Chiefs had lost a little bit of their luster because games have been closer than most people predicted they were going to be.
Right.
So I think that's when Aaron Rodgers takes a step forward and becomes the MVP.
And I think that's a good point because numbers and narrative, right? It's obviously Patrick Mahomes has Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and all these weapons, and Aaron Rodgers only has Devontae.
Right.
Right. And also, I'm not sure. I mean, my college coach, Keith Williams, Coach Dub on IG, he works with all these receivers. He works with Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, all these guys. So, I mean, like I think he coached Devontae at Fresno State. He coached me.
Right?
Yeah. It's crazy. These like the linkages, right? And I mean,
small world.
It's a small world. Exactly. Football's a very small world. And so kind of, I watched Devontae when he came here last year to play the Niners of the NFC Championship game. And I mean, I remember that one route where he beats Sherman up top, right? And it was just, and it's just Rod just and it's just like, oh my God. And then Sammy Watkins 2 weeks later takes that and he beats Sherman on that same route. And what did he say in the post game? He's like, I watched Devontae do that and at Levi's. Man, so I agree. I think Aaron Rodgers can get MVP. But what's your take on Josh Allen? Because that's one team in the AFC that's looking really good. I mean, do you see the Bills?
They've come a long way, but here's the thing: until Josh Allen shows me they can do it on a consistent level, playoff football is a lot different than regular season football. Right. I think that they might be on the cusp of a year away. They might make a run. I don't know. I just have to see it. I have to see it happen in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's a good point you make because my last guest I was talking about Stephon Diggs about not being our top 3 receivers because it's his first year. This is Josh Allen's first year finally breaking out. Yeah. We need to see more body of work.
Yep, true story. True story. Sure.
So talk to me. Actually, yeah, let's talk about someone is actually being in the playoffs. Your son Zach is the starting lineman on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kind of.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Know what? It's a very rewarding feeling. Zach has worked his butt off to get where he was, where he is. Unfortunately, with the year that they've had, Zach hurt his knee, tore up his knee in the first game of the season, and was put on IR for the rest. But he's grinding. He's going to be there for a while. I'm so proud of him. He's had a tremendous work ethic, and it's a little odd to see your seed play what you play, the position that you play, where it is, but it's so rewarding to see the smile on his face when he knows that he's happy and he's part of a good organization. I have nothing but the utmost respect for the Steelers and their organization. I can't stand the football team because we're a rival, but that's just me. But you know what? It's so much respect for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
100%. I mean, to your point, Zach has earned it. Zach has just been in there. He's been in just. I mean, you have every right to be. I mean, anyone Steelers fan must love him. There's nothing. Yeah. And obviously, his character off the field, kind of with the anti-Semitism commentary. I mean, Zach. I mean, for him to be like the first one to speak out against Deshaun Jackson, just kind of put that out there. It's amazing. It's just amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, well, he's a good young man, and you know what? And the great thing about him is that he's an individual, which I've always appreciated as far as when it comes to leadership. You don't follow, you set your own path. And, there's good and bad that comes with all of that. You just have to be ready for it.
100%. Yeah. So actually, you talk about teams that you hated. Let's talk about your favorite rivalry when you were playing in the NFL.
Oh, man. Well, what I learned when coming over from the Raiders, because it was a lot different from the Raiders than it was the Falcons. I only had a chance to play for 2 organizations. Right. But when I came over to the Raiders, everyone hated the Raiders. Everyone hated the Raiders. So everyone, especially in our division, became our biggest rivals. Kansas City, Denver, and even the Chargers, when they were under Marty Schottenheimer, had Raiders Week where they prepared for the Raiders. You got ready for the Raiders. You hated the Raiders. And I'm like, okay, it is what it is. But so they all were. But you know what? Teams that were in my crawl that I had a problem with initially were the Broncos when I came over the Raiders because we couldn't beat them. no matter what type of team we had, we couldn't beat them. So that was an issue. But they eventually became the Chiefs, as well as the Chargers. Our entire division were our biggest rivals. And even to this day, I can't stand the Chiefs. So even when we play against the Chiefs, I feel this ambition to want to go out on the football field and smack somebody who's in red.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it is what it is. But the Broncos are right there, and even the Chargers, even though they changed, they moved from San Diego, the team, the school, the place where I grew up at. They moved to Los Angeles. It's still the Chargers. I still think of them as like the stepbrother, like the Clippers and the Lakers. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
they're one of those teams that you can slap around, but they all gave us fits.
And to your point, I mean, like I'm a diehard Lakers fan, so it's like, I was just so happy when they won this year.
Yes, sir.
I hate the Clippers. I absolutely hate the
Why do you hate
Clippers.
the Clippers? They're not even close to you. There's no reason to hate the Clippers.
Oh my
Everyone wants to
God.
talk. I mean, it's like the stepbrother who doesn't even become invited to the family functions. It's just they're
But
not even
then,
close to the Lakers league.
but
Boston
this,
Celtics, I can understand you hating.
yes.
There's a rivalry. There's something there. But the Clippers, please, they can't even hold up your jock strap in anything. So what's up?
100%, big dog. No, you talk that. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, obviously the Clippers are, I mean, they're still trying to fight for relevance. They're going to be a new stadium arena next year, so pretty much then no problem. I think it's just because you share the same arena. It's just like, I was there for Kobe night
Right,
on 31st. I'm like, oh
right,
my God. And then
right.
obviously for the Lakers to kind of win this year, how did it feel for you? Obviously, because you're also a SoCal native. So how did it feel for you when they won?
You know what the thing is that when you watch sports, and like I said, I'm a sports lover. I'm a
Right.
sports fan. Basketball is my natural sport. I was so impressed because you know the 2020 was such an unprecedented year. Didn't know how I was going to react. I
Right.
didn't know how basketball was going to look in the bubble.
Right.
I had the utmost respect for LeBron James because what I appreciated most about LeBron is the fact that he played both sides of the court very well and very efficiently,
No.
offensive and defense. And you don't see a lot of that.
No.
For example, you see James Harden who can score a ton of points but can't play in the defense, and their team doesn't go much further than a couple rounds of the playoffs. That's what you become accustomed to. But watching LeBron James, you see someone who's advanced the teams that he's been on, even if he did it single handedly, time and time again. And then, of course, being with Anthony Davis, was an added matchup because you thought you saw two guys, but you said everything else after that was kind of a little bit of a step down. Where's
Yeah.
this team going to go? Playing against the Miami Heat in the finals, which was a story in itself. Playing against the Heat, and for them to be there was a tremendous series. It was a lot of fun to watch. But they pulled it off. They pulled it off. And going forward, I think that all sports are going to forever be changed because if you look at the NFL, if it wasn't due to COVID, we probably wouldn't have this adjusted playoff scheme where you're adding two extra teams and you're only giving one team a bye. It's a little different. It's a little different. So, like that. And then, of course, seeing the NBA come back as quickly as they did, we'll see how this all pans out. But it might very well be in this place going forward. It might be like this. We don't know. This is all due to COVID. But I was always in the mindset that football season was football season, basketball season, basketball season. And personally, I never started paying attention to basketball for the most part until Christmas Day.
Right.
That was always my basketball term. That was always so Thanksgiving belonged to football. And then from the time between Thanksgiving and to Christmas Day, you had your sort of transition into the playoffs. What the playoffs was going to be. I started watching basketball on Christmas Day. And then January became bowl season as well as playoff football. Then February you started looking at conference titles as you get ready for March Madness in college. And then, basketball, because basketball was still going on during those times, but you would pay a little bit of attention towards basketball. But obviously, the spring and early summer belonged to basketball, not only college basketball, but also professional basketball. That was my usual timeline when it came to sports. We'll see if that changes now because due to COVID and other circumstances, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably have NBA starting on Christmas Day moving forward, and then probably
I would like that. I would like that because
me too.
Early season basketball, not even training camp or preseason. Exhibition basketball. I don't pay attention to.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, it's a lot easier when it's like Christmas Day and you're getting close to the All-Star games, like New Year and So
yeah, very true.
Yeah, very true. Okay, and pretty much, actually, I forgot to ask about college football because obviously, you are a college football analyst too. I mean, right? And so, kind of, what's your take about the bowl season this year, and kind of what are you expecting to see in the national championship next week?
This, for what it's worth, this college football season was a wash
Yeah.
because you had so many. And look, I understood. I realized that with the NFL, the show must go on because there's big money to gain, and there's big money in college football. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit different. And I was surprised that both football schedules were able to play what they were able to play. When it comes to college football, I was a little beside myself because there were so many games and bowls and stuff that was canceled because you just didn't know. So the product of college football wasn't something that I actually paid attention to at all, really, this season. Obviously, when you get into the playoff and the national championship, it's right there in your face, so it's hard to ignore it. So I'm not surprised by the outcome. Ohio State, Alabama, I'm not surprised at all. Unfortunately for college football, until they expand the playoffs, it's my opinion that we're going to see the same product over and over and over again, and that gets old and stale. So you can't have the same three teams, and with it's a coin flip who's going to be that fourth team in the college football playoffs when you only have 4 teams. So I think the college football program, for what it's worth, is broken. But you know what? It is. Hopefully, it'll be a good game between Ohio State and Alabama for the national championship.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Justin Fields, obviously the top draft. Oh, I mean, we'll see how he can do in his last game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the kind of a coin flip between him and Trevor Lawrence. It's not a coin flip, but I mean,
Right.
kind of like who's a better prospect, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and Nick Saban obviously with Najee Harris. I mean, that's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be very interesting.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it at all.
Yeah. So kind of let's talk about the NFL draft. Who are you looking out for? Maybe you can talk about top rate prospects or anyone who maybe not be might be under the radar, and kind of what are you looking for?
It's still too early to tell
Hmm?
because we're still beginning the process. Who's going to be available? What's going to happen?
Right.
Because of COVID, the natural schedule has been thrown into a fray,
Right.
if you will. But for the Raiders in particular, the first thing they have to decide is on a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Whomever they've got to find a defensive coordinator, and I would like to get them an impact player. So just as we're sitting here talking on this date in early January, I've just begun my evaluations of players available because I'm not really sure who's going to be available, who's coming out, who's staying in, who's going back for another year, that type of thing. So it's just the beginning of the process of evaluation.
Right. Okay, that's good. Yeah. So pretty much defensive coordinator is the number one need. And I guess around the league, what do you think about all the head coaching changes with Jacksonville? And Jacksonville potentially might be getting Urban Meyer now, and so they may be looking at the number one overall pick with a brand new head coach. You may have a brand new head coach and new quarterback, like almost a new regime ushering
There
in
was a lot of
Jacksonville.
speculation when Clemson was playing Ohio State because they showed Urban Meyer in the stands.
Right.
With a couple of people around him. There's a lot of speculation that he's going to be the next head coach of Jacksonville, which if you have the number one pick, I like to call Trevor Lawrence Sunshine from remember
Sunshine. Yes, sir. Say that, Sunshine. That's what me and my boys call him Sunshine too, bro.
Yeah, he looks like that. So I think that Sunshine might be a good fit, and he seems to be presumed the overall number one pick. So it makes sense if you're Jacksonville in that position, you take you need a quarterback anyway. So it's a natural fit.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville's a great fit for him. I think it's a better choice to go there as opposed to New York. Not saying if Justin Fields doesn't go to New York that he's gonna have a bad career by any means, but there's a lot more question marks in New York than there is in Jacksonville because if Urban Meyer ends up being the head coach there, I mean they pretty much have all the pieces there. It's just they just need a QB and head coach. So
certainly, no, true story.
Yeah, so very good. All right, let's talk about. I know we got. So, what was your favorite? What's your favorite moment of obviously your NFL career? Who's your favorite player to go up against? And you guys talk about Arena too.
You know what the thing is that, and it's no slight on Arena, but my NFL career, there were so many memories. I remember one of my teammates, Jamie Dukes, was doing commentary and podcasts and stuff like that. Now he said, "You'll remember your first game, you remember your last game. Everything else in between is a little blur." And it's so true. It's so true. I had the pleasure of going up against the greats like Kevin Green, may he rest in peace. Yes. Bruce Smith, Reggie White, may he rest in peace. Chris Doman, may he rest in peace. I had the pleasure of going up against some great defensive linemen. And the one truism that I can hold, even Michael Strahan, all these Hall of Famers, I never gave up a sack to any of them. And so, that's my one truism. I'm not going into Hall of Fame, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Trust me.
No need.
I had a tremendous career. I'm very satisfied. I'm still living. I'm still breathing at this day, many years afterwards. and I've progressed myself. I'm a full-time dad. I'm a business owner. I'm a commentator. I did everything I wanted to do on the heels of playing 11 years in the National Football League. So I really don't have anything that I can gripe about. It's been a wonderful journey, and I'm still expecting a lot of things to come from here on out.
100%, and I mean, talking to you has been really enjoyable for me because obviously for my journey too, at a smaller scale in the arena scene,
It's all good.
obviously it's
Doesn't
all
matter
good.
the scale. It's just all good. It's the journey. It's an impulse.
Right. I mean, pretty much kind of to your point, kind of same motivations for me. Now I'm a full-time, I have my own business, my own LLC, and now I have my IT consulting. Now I'm doing the podcast like this, and I do wake up with headaches every day, and I'm aching after you
That's
hit
part of
30.
I've got arthritis. I know what you mean. It's part
So you're just like, oh man, but you know what? Hey, I wouldn't trade for anything. I wouldn't trade for anything.
so true.
True story. True story. Man, shoot, man, this is awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on, and if you had any closing thoughts for listeners and viewers, and you know.
You know what? Here's the thing. I will say this because I've told my kids this. When it comes to sports, everyone is not supposed to do everything.
Right.
For example, when it comes to football, it's not a game for everyone.
Right.
And my kids have wanted to play because they wanted to follow my footsteps. You obviously talked about my eldest, Zach, who's playing offensive tackle, but I've still got two more boys that are coming up, and they want to play sports. And I've always told them, I said, look, you don't have to play football, but you have to be active.
Right.
The big thing about being a parent, which I truly treasure, is seeing your seed grow and become something. It doesn't matter what it is, but become something in the sense of being productive, and being a nice person in this world. And that's what I rally. So for all your viewers and all your listeners, I would say this: develop your own voice. This world has plenty of opportunities, and it's not carved out who you should be by your parents or what they did before you. Develop your own voice. That only comes from your hard work, your intuitiveness, your lesson learning, and your desire to do what you want to do. Follow your heart, no matter what it can be, because that would be so much rewarding.
100%. And I think, to close that off, just to kind of caveat that with my own parents and kind of what they want, they were opposed football because my dad's a cardiologist, and with a physician's mindset, he knew CTE before CTE, which didn't stop me because you know what I mean? So obviously have your own voice, find your path, find your wild rabbit, pursue it full force, attack each day with the enthusiasm unbeknownst to mankind, man. And that's it.
True story. Very true story.
Very true story, man. Lincoln, man, I'm gonna have to have you back on here because I enjoyed this way too much. I mean,
It's
yeah,
been fun. It's been a pleasure. My pleasure, definitely.
100,
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
100%. We'll probably reconnect after Super Bowl. So I mean, probably
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
No worries.
Sounds good.
My kids are here's my youngest one. Come here. Come and say hi. Come on, camera. Say hello. There's my youngest. Yeah. So that's Ty. And be honest, people look out because Ty's probably going to be the biggest that I have. He's only 12 right now, but he's already 5'6", 150 pounds. I expect him. Zach is 6'9", same weight as me at 350. But Ty's going to be a big one. He's going to definitely be a big one.
Ty Kennedy, y'all heard it first, man. Yeah, we're gonna see him.
Exactly right. You're gonna remember that name, so it's all good. But thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, brother.
100%, man. And Lucas Kennedy, man, take care, brother. Have a great rest of the day.
Take care. Thank you. What's up, bud?